As the room fell silent, Jason calmly raised his glass, locking eyes with his wife. "Tonight isn't just about celebrating my promotion," he said, his voice steady but cold. "It's about truth, loyalty, and betrayal." The shocked gasp. Jason Hayward had always been a man of quiet ambitions, someone who preferred the comfort of routine and the tranquility of a peaceful life. His relationship with his wife, Caroline, seemed to be the perfect manifestation of that. She was his wife and his manager at work, a role that seemed to blur the lines between their professional and personal lives. But Jason never complained. He saw his life as stable, full of love and affection. Caroline, on the other hand, was the driving force of the relationship, a woman with clear ambitions, a vision for the future that she relentlessly pursued. She was strong-willed and sharp, often giving Jason direction when he felt lost or unsure. At work, Caroline commanded respect. She led her team with the kind of authority that made everyone sit up straighter, listen harder, and work faster. Jason admired her confidence and drive. He loved watching her in meetings, effortlessly giving orders and making decisions that influenced not just their department but the entire company. While some men might have felt overshadowed or emasculated by such a powerful woman, Jason felt proud. He knew what Caroline was capable of, and he was happy to support her in any way he could. At home, though, Jason's role was much different. In the evenings, after long hours at the office, Jason transformed from her subordinate into her caretaker. He reveled in the domestic sphere, a place where he could express his love in small, meaningful ways. The meals he cooked for her were always carefully planned, taking into account her favorites and how tired she might be. The bath water he prepared was always at the perfect temperature, with the soothing scent of lavender and eucalyptus oils drifting through the air. Each of these actions, though routine for Jason, was a testament to the depth of his love for her. He believed that by taking care of her in these small ways, he was strengthening the bond between them. But Caroline wasn't the same woman Jason had married. While Jason remained devoted, doting, and consistent in his affection, Caroline had grown restless. The attention that Jason lavished upon her had once been comforting, even endearing, but over time it began to feel suffocating. Where she once appreciated his predictability, she now craved spontaneity. His unwavering devotion, once a source of stability, began to feel like a weight holding her down. Caroline had become a woman in search of something more. As weeks turned into months, Jason noticed subtle changes in her. The once frequent conversations about their future, their dreams, and even simple things like vacations or weekend plans dwindled. Caroline seemed distant, distracted even when they were physically together. She spent more time at the office, claiming extra responsibilities and late-night projects that Jason never questioned. He trusted her completely, after all, and the idea that she might be growing apart from him never crossed his mind. Jason was not a suspicious man by nature. He saw the world through a lens of good faith and always assumed the best of people, especially those he loved. It was around this time that David entered the picture. David Williams had been Jason's best friend since childhood. Where Jason was introverted and soft-spoken, David was brash and unapologetically confident. He had a reputation as a man who could charm anyone, and though he held a job similar to Jason's in the same company, his presence was far less frequent. He wasn't the type to be tied down to any one thing, job, relationship, or responsibility. This air of indifference, the feeling that he was always above the mundane stresses of life, made him an enigma to those around him. Women found him irresistible, drawn to the mystery he projected, while men respected him for his carefree approach to life. To Jason, however, David was simply a friend, a constant in his life who had been through thick and thin with him. One night, after a long day at the office, Jason invited David over for drinks, a rare opportunity for the two of them to catch up. Caroline was supposed to be home, taking a break from her relentless schedule, and Jason thought it would be a good chance for David to finally meet his wife properly. When the two of them arrived at the house, Caroline was there, but the interaction between David and Caroline was anything but typical. The moment David and Caroline laid eyes on each other, something shifted in the air. Caroline, who had been so disinterested in everything lately, suddenly seemed engaged in a way that Jason hadn't seen in months. She laughed at David's jokes, something she hadn't done with Jason in a long time. Her body language changed. She leaned in when David spoke. Her gaze locked on him in a way that made Jason's stomach twist. There was an undeniable attraction simmering just beneath the surface, and while Jason could sense it, he chose to ignore it. He trusted David, and he trusted Caroline. To him, the idea that his best friend could betray him or that his wife could be unfaithful was absurd. His love for Caroline was blinding, shielding him from the growing cracks in their relationship. As the night went on, Jason excused himself to the kitchen to prepare more drinks, leaving David and Caroline alone. What Jason couldn't have known was that in those brief moments, something ignited between them, something that would soon spiral out of control. David, who had a long history of romantic entanglements, could read Caroline like an open book. He could tell she was bored with Jason's routine, that she was yearning for something more exciting, more dangerous. He played his role perfectly, maintaining his aloof and mysterious demeanor, knowing full well that it was exactly what Caroline craved. Caroline, for her part, was smitten. Here was a man who didn't bend over backward for her, didn't shower her with affection at every turn. David was cool, indifferent, and completely different from Jason in every way. His distance was intoxicating, a stark contrast to the ever-present attention that Jason gave her. In David, she saw a man who could offer her the excitement and unpredictability that her life with Jason lacked. What started as innocent flirtation quickly became something much darker. As Jason continued his role as the perfect host, David and Caroline's connection deepened. What Jason didn't know was that this night marked the beginning of a secret affair, an affair that would not only shatter his marriage, but also destroy his sense of trust in the people he cared about most. The seeds of betrayal were planted, and though Jason remained blissfully unaware for the time being, it was only a matter of time before the truth came crashing down around him. Jason's suspicions began to grow in the weeks following that fateful night. At first, he brushed off Caroline's increasingly erratic behavior as the result of stress at work. She was busier than ever, often staying late at the office or attending meetings that hadn't been on the calendar. But as these late nights became more frequent, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The first real crack in Jason's trust appeared one evening when he came home earlier than usual. He had decided to surprise Caroline with dinner, hoping that a quiet night together would help reignite the spark that seemed to have faded between them. But when he walked into their house, something felt wrong. The lights were off, and there was an eerie stillness that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. As he moved through the house, his footsteps echoing in the silence, Jason noticed that the door to the living room was slightly ajar. Inside, he could hear the murmur of voices, one of them distinctly David's. His heart skipped a beat as he approached the door, and what he saw when he pushed it open made his blood run cold. David was sitting on the couch, far too close to Caroline. His arm was draped casually over the back of the couch, his hand resting near her shoulder. Caroline, who had been so distant and cold with Jason recently, was leaning into David, her body language unmistakably intimate. The conversation between them was hushed, their heads close together, as if they were sharing secrets that Jason was never meant to hear. Jason froze in the doorway, his mind racing. He couldn't believe what he was seeing, his best friend, the man he had trusted with his life, sitting so comfortably in his home, looking at his wife the way Jason used to look at her. And Caroline, the woman he had devoted his life to, was staring back at David with a look that Jason hadn't seen in years. It was a look of desire, of longing, emotions that had been absent from their marriage for far too long. But instead of confronting them, instead of demanding answers, Jason quietly backed out of the room. His heart was pounding in his chest, and his mind was spinning with disbelief. He didn't want to believe that Caroline could be cheating on him. He didn't want to believe that David, his closest friend, could betray him like this. And yet, the evidence was right in front of him. His mind raced with questions. How long had this been going on? How could he have missed the signs? 4 days after that, Jason lived in a state of denial. He tried to convince himself that what he had seen wasn't what it looked like, that maybe he was overreacting. But the nagging feeling in the pit of his stomach wouldn't go away. He started paying closer attention to Caroline's behavior, watching her more closely, looking for any sign that she might be hiding something from him. It didn't take long for Jason to find the truth. Caroline had become careless, perhaps believing that Jason was too trusting or too naive to suspect anything. She left her phone unattended one night while she was in the shower, and Jason, his heart heavy with guilt, picked it up. What he found confirmed his worst fears. Text messages between Caroline and David, carefully worded but undeniably intimate, filled the screen. They spoke in code, using work-related terms to disguise their true intentions, but it was clear what was happening. Jason's hands trembled as he scrolled through the messages, each one a knife to his heart. The betrayal cut deeper than he had ever imagined it could. Caroline wasn't just cheating on him. She was doing it with his best friend, a man he had trusted with everything. The realization hit him like a tidal wave, pulling him under and leaving him gasping for air. Jason's mind began to spin with thoughts of revenge, of confronting Caroline and David and exposing their affair. But something inside him held back. He didn't want to act impulsively, didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing him broken. Instead, he decided to wait, to gather more evidence, and to plan his next move carefully. Over the next few weeks, Jason played the role of the dutiful husband, all the while secretly gathering information. He became a master of subtlety, watching Caroline and David from the shadows, piecing together the details of their affair without them ever suspecting a thing. He started keeping a journal, recording every lie, every deception, every time Caroline claimed to be working late when she was really with David. The more Jason uncovered, the angrier he became. The betrayal burned deep inside him, fueling a desire for vengeance that grew stronger with each passing day. But Jason wasn't a man prone to fits of rage. He was calculated, methodical, and he knew that when the time came to confront them, he would do it on his terms, in a way that would leave a lasting impact. He bided his time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And then one day, an idea began to take shape in his mind. An idea that would not only expose Caroline and David's affair, but also humiliate them in front of their families and friends. Jason decided that the best way to confront them would be in front of everyone they cared about, in a setting where they would have no place to hide. Jason meticulously planned a family gathering, inviting not only his own family but Caroline's as well. It was to be a celebration of his recent promotion at work, a promotion that Caroline had no idea was coming. The irony of it all wasn't lost on Jason. Here he was, being promoted in a job where Caroline was his manager, and yet she was the one who had betrayed him. As the day of the gathering approached, Jason played the part of the loving husband, keeping up appearances so that Caroline wouldn't suspect anything. He went about his daily routine, cooking for her, making sure she was comfortable, all the while knowing that the moment of reckoning was drawing closer. When the night of the gathering arrived, the house was filled with the sounds of laughter and conversation. Jason's family and Caroline's family mingled, unaware of the storm that was about to hit. Caroline, dressed in an elegant outfit and smiling as if nothing was wrong, played the part of the perfect wife, chatting with relatives and friends, completely oblivious to what Jason had in store for her. David was there too, of course, invited by Jason under the pretense of their close friendship. He moved through the crowd with his usual charm, laughing and joking with guests, completely unaware that his world was about to be shattered. As dinner was served and everyone gathered around the table, Jason stood up, tapping his glass to get everyone's attention. The room fell silent, all eyes on him. Caroline smiled at him, expecting a toast to celebrate his promotion, but Jason's face was devoid of warmth. "I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight," Jason began, his voice calm and steady. "It means a lot to have all of you here to celebrate this milestone in my life. But tonight isn't just about my promotion. It's also about truth. It's about loyalty. And it's about betrayal." The room grew tense as Jason's words hung in the air. Caroline's smile faltered, her eyes narrowing in confusion. David shifted uncomfortably in his seat, sensing that something was wrong. Jason continued, his voice growing harder with each word. "For the past several months, I've been living a lie. I've been lied to by the two people I trusted most in this world. My wife," he paused, his gaze locking on Caroline, whose face had gone pale, "and my best friend." The silence in the room was deafening. Caroline's eyes widened in shock, her hand trembling as she reached for her glass of water. David sat frozen, his face drained of color as the weight of Jason's words sank in. Jason reached into his pocket and pulled out the stack of papers, the evidence he had gathered over the weeks. He tossed them onto the table, the sound of the papers hitting the wood echoing through the room like a gunshot. "These," Jason said, his voice cold and unwavering, "are the text messages between my wife and my best friend. They've been having an affair behind my back, and tonight, I wanted everyone to know the truth." Gasps erupted from the guests as the room descended into chaos. Relatives exchanged shocked glances, whispers and murmurs spreading like wildfire. Caroline, now visibly shaking, tried to stand, but her legs gave out, and she collapsed back into her chair. David, the once confident and charming man, was now a ghost of himself. He avoided eye contact with anyone, his face a mask of guilt and shame. Without a word, he stood and quickly made his way out of the house, slipping away like a coward. Caroline turned to Jason, tears streaming down her face. "Jason, please. I'm sorry. I never meant for this to happen." But Jason was unmoved. He had spent too long suffering in silence, too long pretending that everything was fine. Now he was free from the lies, the betrayal, and the pain that had consumed him for so long. "I loved you, Caroline," he said quietly, his voice heavy with the weight of everything he had lost. "But love isn't enough when trust is broken." With that, Jason removed his wedding ring and placed it on the table. The small clink of metal on wood was the final nail in the coffin of their marriage. The divorce was finalized shortly after, and Caroline spiraled into a deep depression, having lost not only her husband but also her reputation and the respect of her family. David disappeared from their lives, leaving nothing but destruction in his wake. Jason, though scarred by the experience, emerged stronger. He rebuilt his life, slowly but surely, knowing that he had done the right thing by standing up for himself. And yet, despite everything, there was always a lingering question in his mind. Could things have been different? But in the end, Jason chose to believe that some things, once broken, could never be repaired.